Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 16 here in the Happy Space Prison. Our duplicants have been working hard at getting steel produced, getting ceramic produced, getting all kinds of things produced in our new carbon district industrial zone. And they're just trucking away through all of it. I've done some preparation for today's episode up here at the base, and first of all, we are working on installing what I'm going to call the attic. I like to think of the base as a skyscraper that is where our duplicants live and eat and produce food, and we need to install some upgrades into it. One, we built this system. We talked about this a little in the last episode. We built it pre-oil, pre-steel, and it has reached the point where it's not functioning anymore because the water in the liquid locks is boiling. I should have used salt water. I really regret not doing that, because then this system would have ran just fine forever. But while we're in here doing things, I'm going to do some upgrades to it, make it last till the end of the game, and also just change it up so it fits in with the build a little bit better. So we're going to go in and we're going to change out the water in here so that we can use oil for the liquid locks, which makes it a little more resilient. We're also going to shorten it, make it a little tighter so that we can fit everything in the space so it lines up with the rest of the building. I also made an area here. I just blocked it out because we're going to need a vacuum in here for our new air conditioning system for our duplicants. It's time that they live in a little bit of luxury. We're going to get some coolant, active coolant running from here that's going to cool the base and keep it exactly how we want it to be going forward. And shouldn't take more than just having a couple tons of steel, which we already have. We have tons of plastics, so we don't need to worry about that. And our ceramic situation, we have that listed on here. We have 6 tons of it now, so we're all set for everything we need to build that. And then after that, we're going to focus on cleaning up our water systems. So we have these water systems that have been with us from the beginning. They're very, very hot, and they are right next to our base, which is not great, but we want to also clean them up to make them work a little more efficiently, make all the water storage a lot better. Instead of having mixed waters from everything melting, I want to have a couple of different tanks. And I also want to work on getting these water pools around the map all collected together. I want everything centralized in an area for handling the fluids of the map. And we're going to do all of that today. We're going to get started by working in this area. So what I thought to do to fix this problem is I want to shorten it up. I don't need as big a space to store this. I only really need 2 vents coming in and 2 gas pumps. Originally I didn't want to crack this open because then all of this compressed gas would go back into here, but I'm just going to let it go and then we'll pump it back in and it will be fine. I definitely do not want this one to break because then all of this natural gas is going to go out into the map. So we're going to work hard on doing that first, but let's go in here and just first of all, let's separate these 2 sections here. Actually, I don't need to get rid of this one. Let's just get rid of these 2 tiles. I'm going to pull out these pumps because we're going to replace them with steel pumps anyway, because the gold ones, while they'll work with the natural gas, if we're compressing it, it might get hotter than we can handle and cause the gold ones to break. It's definitely not going to get hot enough to do any problems for steel though. And so we're going to fix that up so that it's all set and fixed for us. So I also want to rip out the existing automation and the existing power lines just because I want to rerun them, so we might as well just get them all cleaned out and start fresh. We'll leave the gas lines for now, though I do want this one here. I want to deconstruct because it has steam in it. I want that to be released and go into the water before we handle all this water. This section of water over here we can mop up. For this side where we have a little more than we can handle, and so I got to do some creative thinking with that. So let's deconstruct these tiles. Oh, there's steam up on this end of the pipe too. So let's deconstruct that. Just looking to see if I can. You know what? I think what I'm going to do, let's take, just because I want to be able to get rid of these lines and be able to handle them properly, let's connect them up. We'll hook them up to this vent and we'll bring in Well, we'll fix that once we move the vents over here for where they're going to be properly. So that'll be just a minute. We'll get that taken care of. The lines that are inside here, I can just deconstruct because that gas will get released into the map here, and that's fine. So all of these should be good. So I can actually cancel that one. Okay. So what we want to do, let's get rid of this tile here and this one here, just so that we have everything kind of centralized. We'll also, this one we got to leave because we don't want to lose this liquid lock. So if we want this to be the new wall, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these two tiles as well. And then we'll put in their spot. That's where we'll put our new gas vents. So we're going to have to get rid of that water in there. Trying to think of the easiest way for us to get rid of that water without causing any problems. I think I'm going to deconstruct this tile. And then this one. And that'll allow all this water to kind of flow down into here in this space, and we'll be able to crack it out through here. So let's do a couple of temporary tiles up here above where we just dug out, and then I'm going to crack this open, let all that water flow out until it's small enough that we can mop it up, and then we'll seal this back up. And then once we have that done, I can start installing the pumps. So the first thing that we needed to do in order to fix our natural gas system is change out our liquid locks for something a little more resilient. So to do that, we need access to crude oil. And rather than having a pitcher pump down here, thought it was time to make use of advanced technology. So we have a bottle filler here that is supplied by the pump that is going up to our metal refinery. So our duplicants can grab bottles of oil on demand. And they're using that right now to pump it in to our liquid lock here. So once that's full, we can have one that's oil-based. We'll close it off and clean this up a little bit so that there's no other gases, and we can open this up and get rid of the water. As far as in here goes, we have two gas pumps that are running on top of each other. We have a line from those that goes down and goes to our gas range below, like it did before. And these pumps, I decided I'm not going to need automation in there. I had automation, so it only pumped out on a certain amount. If there's gas in the storage, we can use the gas. We're definitely going to store more than we're going to use in this particular storage. I don't think we're going to need an automation sensor in there. So all we need to do now is to get that seal done. So let's turn this off for a second. We're going to disable auto bottle. We're actually going to turn off crude oil, because what I want to do is grab oil, and we need to get a specific amount. So we're going to go back down here, and we've done this trick before where we take this and we set it to a certain amount. So in this case, we want 2 kilograms of oil, and we're going to relocate that into our vent here. That means that we'll be able to get that oil up here, and we'll empty it out, and these vents will become infinite again. So we're going to go down here and set this back up to 200 so that they can continue to use it. And then after we get this oil spilled here, we can turn this back on and continue filling up the airlock. Once we have this sealed, we can seal this room off, and then we'll turn this pump on so that it can start pumping out the gas. It's actually already connected, so as soon as we get that, this line will empty out, this line will start pumping in, and we'll start pumping the gas out of here, into the storage. So we want to empty this out. Let's do this at a high rate because I want them to do it right now so we can get it done. And then, like I said, after that, all we have to do is worry about getting this water out of here and then sealing this up, and this project will be done. Decided to change up tax just a little bit here because we have glad I just noticed that. I do this a lot. I put the wrong sensor in. A hydro sensor is not going to do a lot for telling me how much gas there is in a room. I decided to change this up. Instead of putting in a oil lock, I'm just going to seal this room up permanently because it's all made out of steel now. The pumps are steel, the wires are steel, the Atmos sensor that I'm going to put in is going to be made out of steel, which means that we don't need to worry about it breaking in the future. The temperatures in here are never going to cause any problems. I'm never going to change this system up. So we're going to make it a permanent system. We'll just close it up. Worst case scenario, if I do need to get in there, I can put down a liquid lock and break my way in, but I think we'll be good. We never have to worry about it again. So we're going to get this Atmos sensor put in. I'm going to work on putting these tiles in the right order. So I'll put this one and then this one first and then do this one. That way all that gas gets pushed back in. As you can see, we're down to like 300 kilograms per tile. We were at like 500 and this is already up to 800. So we're moving gas in there pretty quickly. I also need to set this wire on here, otherwise this pump's just going to run forever. So that way I can keep some gas in here. The reason for keeping the gas in there, if I haven't said this already, is because then there's gas in there at a temperature. So when the gas is added in at the 500 degrees, it averages out and it can pump out before it gets hot enough to cause any problems for the steel. So that's why we have everything set up the way we do. Let's sweep everything out of here. We're going to turn this to be, if the pressure is above 1 kilogram, get it out of there. So sweep everything. Why are you not sweeping that? I guess that's because it's new since I had the sweep filter set. So we'll sweep those out. We'll seal this up and then we're done with that. Next project is to move on to doing our cooling system over here. And I'm going to take a good bit of time explaining that because I want to make it pretty clear what's going on with that, because this is an important step in moving into the mid-game. Once you are able to cool things down, you can do a lot of really cool things. So we'll take a good bit of time explaining how all of that works. Time to move on to our air conditioning setup. We have our natural gas system installed and working. It'll take a few cycles before all of that natural gas gets moved over and we allow this to run again. It's fine. We lose a little bit of natural gas, but we're not using the natural gas for power anyway. We just need it for cooking at the moment. So it's not that big of a deal. I'm cleaning up the mess from that, and then we are now working over here. So I used water for this liquid lock specifically because I need water down here, and so I can just use the same setup to connect and drop water off. I'm going to put in an Atmos or a hydro sensor because I'm going to be working and I'm going to forget how much water I want in here. And we're basically just going to fill this area here with just a couple 100 kilograms of water across the bottom. That's the basis of our steam chamber. So we're going to work building our way up from the bottom. And so I just blocked this whole room off because I need a vacuum in here. There's ways to do it without doing the vacuum, but it's just because it's such a small area, it's very easy to just block it all in and then delete the block so you have a vacuum. So that's how I prefer to do it. The next thing we need to put in here is going to be our, under utilities, we have our thermal aqua tuner. We need it to be made out of steel. And I'm going to put that down here at this end of the steam chamber. And then what we're going to do next is work on the plumbing for it. So we're just going to do a bridge underneath. And then I want to take care that I'm using the correct items. So for the bridge, it's outside, inside the insulated tile. It doesn't matter what it's made of. Insulated tile, only certain parts need to be ceramic. So anything that's in this 2-block tall area down here, if I have pipes in there, I want them to be ceramic, and if I have items, I want them to be steel. So these two are already ceramic. I'm going to put ceramic here and here. And then I can switch to using just regular piping, and I can do igneous rock or whatever I have. So then I'm going to connect one from here to here, and then from here up and into here to connect the bridge to it. The next part we need is a ceramic pipe from here, and we want to put in a liquid pipe thermo sensor, and that's going to go right before our aqua tuner. And we're going to do automation wire. We're going to do steel up to here. We are going to next put in our power for this. And so we're going to use heavy watt wire for the power because this system uses 1,200 watts of power. Putting in a power transformer outside is going to generate heat and send in power that way. It just seems kind of like a waste to me. So I just usually set it up so that I can do heavy watt wire inside our build. To make that happen, I'm using heavy watt conductive joint plates just to future-proof it a little in case I want to change anything out. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to connect it with a heavy watt wire made of steel between these two there, and that's going to be the power coming in. This is set up so that when we're done, this will have a vacuum inside of it, so there's no heat transfer, because this room is going to be a steam room. And so if this was a steel plate and then it had gas above it, the heat from in here would leach out, and that would make it less efficient. It would also make it so that I have a hot room next to a cold room that is exchanging heat, and that just doesn't make any sense. So the next thing we want to do is put some fluorine in, and we're going to put, let's set this before I forget, if we want to send a green signal if this is below 200 kilograms. So that will allow us to get that last bit put in. We're going to build some insulated tiles. I'm going to stick with doing the igneous rock just to match the style. It doesn't really matter what they're made of. And we're going to come all the way across onto the top here to finish out the steam room. So I'm going to let them build this, and then we'll move on to the next room. Okay, it's time for us to finish up the install here. The next thing we need is a steam turbine. We want to make sure we're going to make this out of steel and plastic so that we have it set to be the right materials for what we need. We're going to put that in right there. I already put some piping in. I'll show you exactly how that all works, but first I need some power. Let's do a line here. I'm just going to do steel just because it's a short run, just to be sure that it's right. Actually, you know what? The power lines aren't going to matter. Buildings I like to do out of steel because I want to make sure that they don't overheat. But when it comes to wires, it's mostly about the temperature where they're going to melt, and this is going to stay cold in here, so lead will do just fine to connect that power up. This is power coming from the steam turbine going back into the network, so we're going to be feeding power back from the steam turbine, feeding power into the aqua tuner. For now, it's going to take more power to run this than we're going to get back, but once we get to super coolant, if we ever switch out to that, you can actually get it to be power positive because the super coolant doesn't take nearly as much effort to cool as the coolant we're going to use here. The next thing is we're going to put in a reservoir, and now this one I do want it to be out of steel. Looks like I don't quite have enough steel yet. I think that's because I queued some up for this and it's being currently used. Let me wait until I have enough steel to do that. The way the piping works is the coolant is going to go through and go up this way. It's going to have, we'll have a reservoir here that's going to hold all of that. And then we're going to have that feedback down this way. It'll go past this thermosensor, and the thermosensor is going to tell the aqua tuner whether or not we need to cool that fluid down. So I just thought of something else. I actually want to put in a smart battery. I just like to have one in here for the purposes of, actually this is connected directly to the network, so it's not going to need that. I think I might actually be able to shorten this whole thing up. I'm going to move this down just a little bit more because the, without the smart battery in there, we can actually make this just a little bit shorter, and that's better. I just like space efficiency. It doesn't have to be. We have plenty of space in the map, but we might as well make it a little bit shorter. So I'm going to move the aqua tuner down in. We'll get the reservoir put in, and then we'll seal this up. We're working on the last step here for getting our steam turbine room finished up. I have got all the automation wired up. Oh, I left some stuff that in there needs to be swept. We're gonna have to go in and get that before we are finished here. That's okay, we can get it all done. I'm going to leave the power here messed up and or turned off so that we don't actually turn this into a steam room quite yet, because I want to go in and get that. It really wouldn't matter if I left a few pieces of stuff in there, but it will bother me to no end, and so I'm going to let it go. What we're waiting for here is our hydrogen. I ran a vent line up here, and we have a vent here. I just put a tiny blob of petroleum I had sitting around there to block the gas from coming out, and we're going to pressurize this room up with hydrogen. Hydrogen just allows it to better cool down because hydrogen has a really good thermal conductivity. So it allows it to, the coolant to cool down things faster. So if we're going to put gas in there, why not hydrogen? Because we have it nearby. So the way this works is this loop cools down here, it comes back up and it goes past the steam turbine, cooling itself back down and then into this reservoir. And then we have the reservoir to keep a stable temperature on our coolant. So currently it's at 8 degrees. So everything in here is nice and chilly. And then we can set this to whatever temperature we need to keep that loop going. Before we get to that far, we want to close this off so that we can have it done. And then we'll get in here and clean this up and we'll get this room running. As it cools down the polluted water that's in there for storage, and you can see this tank is about half full, so we have some we have some mass in there to act as like a thermal battery, so we have like a good amount of thermal mass in there to stabilize the temperature, but also so that we can run out the line a little bit more, because we're going to want to send that cooling somewhere to be productive. For right now, all it's cooling down is itself, and we want it to cool down more than that. So once we get this sealed up and we get it running, then we'll move on to the next step, which is using that cooling to cool down our base. So I worked out some different things. I was going through different ways that we could do the cooling loop for the base. And I actually had a pretty complicated way I was going to do it, where I had a secondary loop and like a bigger buffer tank. And the idea was that I would have a buffer tank that kept the temperature right, so that when we make changes using the aqua tuner, it doesn't change before it goes into the loop, and the buffer tank will keep it stabilized. Then I realized I already have a buffer tank in this system here, and I can use it. So we're going to go in there and we're going to make some changes there. The first thing we got to do is I want to empty these 2 buckets of petroleum that I brought up. I actually got some petroleum because I have a molten slickster that got in here, and he's been dropping petroleum down into the oil biome. Definitely something we got to work on soon. But it was nice because it gave me these small bottles of petroleum that I could use, and they are good to use for these little tiny liquid locks, because I know nobody's going to sweep them up by accident, because I don't have anywhere I'm using it. So putting the petroleum there, even though this is really hot and this is really cold, it's not going to change it. And so we can do a little temporary liquid lock like that. We can deconstruct these tiles to get in, and then we can make some changes to move some things around. I actually want to empty this out because I'm going to need 2 more little blips of petroleum when we're done. So I'm going to empty this one out so it splits into a couple of tiles and then mop it up. And so we can remove it. But now that we have that, we're going to have people come up here. They're going to break in and they'll be able to make some changes. So the big change that we're going to do is, right now this loop has the polluted water. It's going into this tank. It's coming down here. It's hitting a thermosensor between this buffer tank and the thermal aqua tuner. So when this is too hot, it freezes it down 14 degrees, and then it comes out colder. If I connect over here to the loop, that means that sometimes I'm going to have really cold coolant going out to the base, which is not ideal. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a thermosensor, and this one doesn't have to be steel because it's not going to be inside there. And I'm going to put it right here. And then the automation wire, and again, it doesn't have to be steel. It's not going to be inside the room. It's going to go this way and connect up to here instead. And then we'll be able to remove this one. And I think I want to turn off the aqua tuner while I'm working in here, because it is, I don't want it running while we're changing things around. And then we're going to take off the automation wire from the bottom here. And what we'll do is we'll have this loop out to come through this way, and then it'll go here and here. And then what we can do is pull our loop out from here and connect it up down here. So when basically this automation is going from the output of this tank, and it's going down here, and in between this and this is the rest of the base. So polluted water will be coming out, and it will be going into here. The base will be in between there. So this will say, hey, the temperature in here has gotten above where we want it to be cool. And we're actually going to set this at 28 degrees because we had it set as cold as we could go because that's what we wanted to be able to transfer cold to somewhere else. But we want it here to be at the temperature we want the base, which is 28 degrees is what I'm going to, so I think I decided on 27. So now when this polluted water comes out, it's for now, it's going to definitely not need cooling because we're down at -6. But when we connect this up, we have 32 degree coolant going in, then it's going to need some more. So this will be able to go up. Let's do a couple of ceramic lines there, and then we'll do regular lines here and there. I want to see, trying to think of the easiest way to get this all lined up so that we can go. So we need to come out from here and go down here. Okay, so then this one can go like that. It'll be inside the wall. Oh, that means I don't actually need this or this. I can go like this and connect here. But I do want this to stay ceramic there. And that'll be good. And then this one can just connect here and here. And we'll disconnect it from there. Yeah, I think that'll work out perfectly well. And then that way we have all the tiles will be, all the pipes will be inside where we're going to have insulated tiles, because we're going to be moving the insulated tiles out one row to accommodate this thermo sensor. And then the last thing to do is to disconnect it here so that this line can go in properly. And then let's get rid of this, this, and this. And the other thing I want to do is down here at the bottom of the map, I have, okay, so I do have coolant coming in from here. I'm going to disconnect this line right here so that no more is coming back from here. That way this tank empties out into our buffer tank at the top. And then we'll see how we're doing as far as how much coolant we have in the buffer tank. Once that empties, I think it'll be good. This tank currently has 2.5 tons in, which is what we want. And I'm just going to empty the rest of this out so that this is empty and we can remove all these old lines. So that's emptied in now. We can reconnect this, disconnect this bridge, and then eventually we can remove all of this stuff. So now back up here, what we should see. So now coolant's coming out. Now we have hot coolant going in. So it's going through here. It's at 32 degrees and it's dropping off into this reservoir, which is slowly climbing up in temperature. And currently cold coolant is coming out because we have to stabilize the temperature before this will work the way we want it to. But in the long run, this hot coolant is going to raise this temperature up. When it raises it up above 27 degrees, it's going to send a signal down here into our aqua tuner, which is going to say, hey, I am getting too hot up here. Send me some coolant. But so it'll cool down the line, but it'll only cool it and then it'll send it directly into the reservoir, which means in the long term, this will make micro changes to the temperature in here instead of having a 14-degree difference going out to the base. And then this coolant will come out. It'll always be within 1 degree of what we have set here, which means we can have really fine control over what temperature the coolant going out to the base is set at. I'm having some stuttering with the plumbing, and sometimes that happens when I'm in different speed modes and stuff, and I don't like it. I'm going to have to reload to fix it. For now, this is working the way I want it to. I'm going to let it run for a while so it stabilizes the temperature in our reservoir. You can see it's climbing up pretty quick. It should get there, and then we'll let the whole coolant line run for a couple of cycles just to make sure it's doing what we want, and then we'll seal it back up and be done with it. I've been letting this test for a little while, and it's working exactly the way that I expected it to. So when this gets above 27, which it's about to get to now, it's going to tell this aqua tuner that it needs to cool down. And that's because the coolant in this tank is above 27 degrees, which means that when it does that, it's now sending 16-degree coolant up through this loop. cooling down the steam turbine and then putting it inside the reservoir. So the reservoir gets up to like 27.5, and then it slowly starts to work its way back down as that coolant gets in. As it gets below 27, it says, okay, I've had enough. And now it lets back in the coolant that's coming from the base. And so then it's back and forth because it'll be, you know, this 30-degree coolant that's coming back out of the base. We're sending in 27, we're getting back 31 because there are some hot spots in the base. And that'll warm this back up. It gets up to like 27 and a half, and it drops down to 26, which is pretty tight variance in temperature, which makes me pretty happy. And that way we're not ever sending like super cold coolant into the base and dropping the plant temperatures down by shocking or whatever. It would still be fine because things are pretty resilient as long as you're not doing it for a long period of time. The air doesn't change that quickly. Plants don't change that quickly. But this allows us to have really fine granular control over our temperature, which is what we were going for. I will say as a caveat, this works great in this environment where I'm sending a large cooling loop that's just through regular granite pipes. Every once in a while, I have some spots that are radiant just to really hit the cooling in those spots. But mostly it's just going in through and doing the overall evening out of temperature in the base. It is one of the reasons we're getting like 4-degree difference is because we're also cooling off our desalinators currently. When I redo this and take them out and they have their own separate cooling solution, they will not be part of the base. We're also cooling down here for cooling down the water in our refrigerator. And I had a little bit of cooling down here for the poke shells, and I can actually take that back off because there's no heat source down there to heat them back up. I just had it in because they were hot when I got it started, and I never had anything to fix it. So we can do that, and we'll pull this coolant back out of that line and remove it. And then it also has a coolant loop that goes up here and does like a radiant spot on the storage because I have a tendency to throw hot stuff in there, and I want to slowly cool it back down. So pretty simple for all that stuff. There's not a lot of heat is what I'm saying. If this was a room where we had a lot of heat going, we would want to set this up differently and put the sensor here so we can just dump a bunch of cold into that room because you're going to need a lot of cold to cool it down. For this one, we're not going to need a lot of variance in our temperature, and so it works really, really well. So I got to be careful when I'm putting this back together because I want to make sure that I am sealing the room up without getting anything trapped inside, just because it really bugs me if I don't. And let's do a quick double check. Everything in here is ceramic and steel inside the chamber. Ceramic, steel. Aqua tuner's made of steel. The pipes are made of ceramic, and our automation line, it's steel down here, but then the rest doesn't matter because it's not in the hot. So we're all good. This can get sealed up. The next thing we need to do is empty this so that we can create a new bubble of petroleum there. We can get rid of this one, mop up that old one, and seal that off. And then we'll be all done with this. The only other thing I want to do for this section here that I'm going to be calling the attic, we have our utility connections, we have our air conditioning connection, and then this is basically, it's a spot for us to catch any hydrogen that gets released in the base or whatever. What we'll do is we'll put in some ventilation up here, just like you would in a real attic. I'm trying to kind of make it like this is a real apartment building that the duplicants live in. And so any extra gases that make it up here, they'll collect at the top, and we'll put in a ventilation that vents it out. There's no real source for it, and so it's not likely we're going to get much. So I'm just going to let it go for now until it builds up to the point where we have some, and then we'll work on that. But then that's pretty much this area is done for now. We need to do one down at the bottom to add in a basement to go with the attic so that we can handle the carbon dioxide instead of just letting it vent out into the map. But I want to get all of this stuff moved to its proper home before we try to tackle any of that. So this will keep us working and nice and cool for the rest of the playthrough. We won't have to make any changes to this. We'll probably, when we get to space and we get super coolant, we'll swap out the coolant lines for super coolant just because it's much more efficient. We can actually run this without any power connection because super coolant can generate more power from the steam turbine than it needs to run its aqua tuner. So that might be something we do, but we don't necessarily need to do that. So this is a done solution. So we're going to seal this up. We'll clean it up a little bit. And then in the next episode, we'll move on to our next project. I hope you learned a little bit and I hope you had fun watching. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.